Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order had two camps when it released, either that the people thought that this was the best Star Wars game at the time ever since the Jedi Knight games, KOTOR, and the Unleashed games, or that the people had hated on the game for various reasons, such as mixed visuals and an overstretched story. But obviously, it has been 5 years since that release, and ever since then, a lot of people has changed their thoughts and opinions of the game. As for me, I had certainly had moments where the game was so good that it reminded me of Dark Souls concerning with combat, and sometimes when I'm traversing, it also feels a little bit like Uncharted. But the game also had moments where there were clear and obvious flaws in the game. But enough yammering on about this in this intro, so let's start the video off with the story. The game starts off with introducing us to Cal Kestis, a Ginge who's just working in some junkyard. However, his force abilities are revealed after he saved his friend, which soon got them and a couple of other workers to be interrogated by the Inquisitor, which turns into trying to escape from the Imperials. After Cal jumps into a random ship to save his life from this Inquisitor, he then meets a stranger known as Cere Junda, who had greeted Cal Kestis with a quest of recovering a holocron, which has a list of children that they could train into the Jedi to rebuild the Order. This then drags onto the Zeffo, which at this point the only thing I know from them is that they are an ancient civilization that are force sensitive, and they had the location of said holocron with admittedly a few adventures along the way.
I'm not in it for the memories, and honestly, you're not worth my time. So let's make this quick.
Something better. Dathomir will be your grave.
But at the end, the Inquisitor has the holocron. We steal it from her and she gets force choked by Darth Vader himself. And then we basically run away to the ship. And what about the end, alright? The end? Cal Kestis destroys the holocron to leave the children up to the force, because he gets visions of him being a terrible master for the children. While Cal Kestis himself doesn't really have much of a personality, since he has a lot of the classic Disney's good main character mentality, it's really Cere Junda and the Inquisitor that have a lot of depth with their personality. And it shows their own character development and their dynamics, which I will get into. If you take the story at face value, it is very bland, as it is very clear they wanted to use the Zeffo for, I don't know, something. However, EA had made up for the lack of story with the dynamics between the characters, as well as threading into a theme which I would like to call Master and Padawan. We first have Cal Kestis dealing with the trauma of Order 66 from the events of Revenge of the Sith, and actually exploring within himself on who he is as a Jedi and as a person, while also dealing with the failure of saving his master Jaro Tapal. Throughout the story's progression, Cal's personality, in my opinion, has grown as he had new confidence in himself, but still deals with the PTSD that he must have received, and at the end of the game, he then accepts the death of his master and hopes that he'll do better and honor his legacy and sacrifice. It's a poetic story of the stages of grief, with the shock of death, the anger of what happened with Order 66, the clones and the Republic, and then the depression and guilt that came throughout Cal's life. And of course, the acceptance with the death of Jaro Tapal, as I just discussed before. This even occurred as he tried to help the Inquisitor to forgive Cere for her sins, though that doesn't really matter as Darth Vader basically kills her. However, my two main problems with this story are the Zeffo and the ending. The storyline of the Zeffo is really confusing to me, because I do appreciate at least trying to add a potential new storyline to the Star Wars universe, but apparently not a lot of people had really cared about it. along with me. Because the Zepho was like out of nowhere. There was no comics relating to this. Obviously, no movies were relating to this. It is like very rarely mentioned in the Star Wars community that I had to go into Wiki for Star Wars, and apparently this was viewed in the Jedi games, Galaxy Heroes, and from my memory, Clone Wars. So yeah, as you can expect, if it's not going to be memorable from most of other media, it's most likely it's not going to be memorable in the gaming community. This actually reminds me a lot of the movie called Eternals from Marvel Studios, where there was a group of godlike entities, and they were supposed to save the world from the deviants or whatever, but it wasn't even that known well in the comic community, which was literally the only media where the Eternals was founded. So if it wasn't known in the comics, how is it going to be like memorable in the movies? It's the same with the Zepho. If it's not memorable in any other kind of media, unless EA had made this Zepho thing actually work out the way that it should, this could have been a good thing. But it didn't. It's not memorable. I don't remember the Zepho as something that is like to talk about. And I don't remember the Zepho as if it was exciting. I just remember them as an obstacle, at most. I'm not saying that the story is terrible, but what I'm saying is that if you want to create a memorable story for a game, especially for Star Wars, which, you know, needs to be memorable, like, it's not going to be memorable. Why don't you focus on something like the Empire chasing you and this holocron? Like, why don't you describe the stakes that come with discovering this holocron, or the morals and the injustice of the Jedi Order? And sure, they have been shown at, you know, the end of the game. I just feel like that it should be given more of the spotlight. However, what's weird was the ending, because I want to put this simply, Cal had visions of kids dying, which makes him slice the holocron in half. And I get that it's supposed to protect the kids from the Empire, but, you know, Star Wars Episode 8 clearly showed just how wonderful the kids' Padawans' futures are. Now, the story of the game isn't perfect. However, I do see a lot of redeeming factors in the game when it comes to the story, but I only remember the beginning of the story and the end of the story, because those are the most interesting and exciting moments in the game, and they were also pretty significant to the story, while most of it just talked about the Zepho, and it was very stretched. However, let's talk about the gameplay, consisting combat and other stuff in the game. Throughout the game, the only weapon that we use is the iconic lightsaber, so it is very important that EA gets the small details right, or else it wouldn't really be a fun Star Wars game. Thankfully, we have a lightsaber that is perfected, from the color of the blade to the audio of the ignition, as well as perfecting the animations and movement that is not only accurate to the Star Wars universe, but also just feels great and fluid. The movement often does resemble the combat of a Souls-like game, as the game goes into great detail on how it's important for you to have perfect timing, split-second parries and dodges, while also watching the enemy trying to kill you with its many attacks and strategies. Fun fact, most of the choreography was actually designed by Cameron, the actor of Cal Kestis, so that his character would have his own style, which brings in the fluidity more, and even ties into the story of Cal trying to figure himself on who he is as a Jedi, remembering his old ways and transforming it into with his current style of lightsaber combat throughout the game. And even his lightsaber evolves from the traditional single-bladed lightsaber to now a double-bladed lightsaber that can also count as dual lightsabers, Although they call it split lightsaber, so oh well. All of this makes the combat feel impactful and striking as you improve on your skills, and the game makes most enemies feel like there is a great challenge when you try to kill them as you're going through the story campaign. However, when you die, there is a great consequence as you lose your XP, force, and some of your skill points. And the only way to get those back is by hitting or killing your enemy, which raises the stakes even more. For me, now death will actually mean something and encourages you to do better and be more careful. The bosses are probably the most excellently crafted part of the game, as it uses the elements of the Souls-like games while also giving it the same amount of fluidity and almost intelligence given to the bosses make them very formidable. And this is more true with the lightsaber duels. The enemies themselves of course vary, so whenever you kill one of them, each of these enemies BD1 scans the enemy, giving you info and strategy, which I didn't even know before, and the varieties are exceptional, from the common and stupid stormtroopers to the purge troopers with staffs, batons, and guns, to other troopers such as flame troopers and even insects like large spiders, snails, etc. What's interesting is sometimes they're not just going to stand there and do nothing, but rather sometimes it's Imperial versus nature. Sometimes there are great interactions, like conversations from different stormtroopers, and this makes every moment feel unpredictable. As traversing through the many worlds of the game, we get to meditation spots, which not only make respawn safe and regain health abilities, but can also upgrade your lightsaber combat, force, and normal combat stuff. And this is all very essential to the combat to make the combat easier, like giving new techniques, and with the double-bladed lightsaber, new force abilities, and upgrading overall health. After beating the game, you'll also get to have what I would like to call force combat challenges, which is essentially you go into an arena and you basically have to complete a challenge from them. There is also one of those battlegrounds things. That's pretty much you trying to challenge yourself by putting every single enemy there. Apart from the additional skills, force abilities are really constrained as they push, pull, and time freeze. And they are all important skills to learn as you can very easily defeat enemies with them. While the game absolutely loves to use the use of combat and lightsabers, the game is also not afraid to give you puzzles, which actually require a lot of problem solving, and encourages you to actually think on how to solve a puzzle to go from A to B for the campaign, or to go and get the collectibles. EA had really surprised people when it came to open world, as many people thought that this would be linear. However, EA proved them wrong, and they made sure that they add in as much detail and visuals. They really did outdone themselves, and they were so confident with their visuals and graphics and all that they sometimes make you deepen very deeply on the worlds that they had crafted. The world is also so large that oftentimes I had gotten lost to where I was going. It was always rewarding whenever I got to my destination, Force Echo or Chest. And at the end, that's what adventure games should be all about. When going through the open world, there are many traversal mechanics such as parkour, wall climbing, wall running, and double jump. And they are all ways of getting through the maps of the game, and if mastered, they can be pretty smooth, almost feeling Uncharted-like. All of the other worlds have a main road, however you can sometimes veer off that path so that you can mess around and explore at your own pace. And the game encourages you so by giving you rewards such are Force Echoes and Chests. Force Echoes are which Cal is able to give some context to past history and environment, which is extraordinary as it would give extra depth and extra story to the map of these worlds. Some of the Force Echoes will give you the ability to increase your health or increase your force, and they are found in the more difficult puzzles. The chests are also in 3 different kinds. We have normal chests, which are basically you can open chests straight up, red chests, which you have to slice the chest using BD1, and then the yellow chest is the most valuable chest, as you will get stim canisters. Although you can only get 6 stim canisters in the game, while the others give you cosmetics such as Cal's poncho, outfit, BD1's appearance, the Mantis's appearance, and most important of all, parts for the lightsaber. However, I will say though, not a lot of this really develops the game. Like, this is more aesthetics, completionist sake, and laughs and giggles. The overall lightsaber combat and force has been more refined than any other Star Wars game in history, with the enemies being tastefully crafted with a balance of being difficult, but not too difficult that makes it feel legitimately impossible, as well as adding problem solving with puzzles to challenge your mind even more. EA also perfected the open world and traversal so much that it feels like I am a Jedi going on a grand adventure with the elements from Uncharted. Overall, this is a really good Souls-like game, and I recommend to anyone who has not played it. And with that, I say goodbye.